What you'll need at this point is your yarn. You need a solid block of time because ideally when you wind a warp, you want to do it all in one go so your tension stays consistent while you're winding. We need a long piece of string that we're going to measure to get the length of the warp. I've got some old weaving thrums here. I just like to use those for doing my choke ties and also my counting ties at the end. Measuring tape, some scissors are always handy to have close by. Let's get started. And yes, I do apologise for any noise in the background. That is my little one trying very hard to be quiet for me, but it's a bit tricky. So let's see, it's made a big string. This one I will need to cut down to size. I think the last warp I did was maybe 3 yards or so. Now when I wind a warp, I like to make 2 crosses, especially when I'm working with wool or a sticky warp. It's just a bit of a safety net. So if you lose the cross or it gets a bit too felted together as you're drawing it through, you can just use the other cross. And if that sounds confusing, you'll see me do it, and then hopefully it's less confusing. All right, so that's 150 centimetres there. I'm going to give myself just a little bit extra to tie my knots at the end. There we go. Now, in particular, if you're using a warping mill, you may find you need to adjust where your pegs are. So I usually start at the top. And so I've got it running over this first peg and under the next peg. You can start the other way around, doesn't matter, but that's where my cross will be getting made. So, oh, that's really close to 150. You know what, because I've been really generous with my sampling, I am just going to leave it where it is. You could adjust the height of this, or you could look at moving it up and around, but because I was generous with my little bit of excess, I'm not too worried. And then down the bottom, again, you can choose to go over or under the first peg. Just make sure you do the opposite, because this is where our cross is going to get formed. Got that there. Just giving that a little wrap and tie my secure knot. Go. So you want that one to be fairly firm, just because that's the measuring one and you don't really want it to move. If I was warping for the scarf, I think the scarf only has 80 something threads, so you could potentially do that as one chain. Being the bandana, it's got 200 and something threads, so I'm going to do it in maybe 3 chains. I'm just going to see how they look as I go. This one I have not clamped to the table. Just because it's quite heavy, it's not really going to move anywhere. Got our string measured. Now we start winding. Refer to your pattern, or follow along if you're making this bandana, because I will let you know what I'm doing. I am going to add floating selvages to this. It is completely up to you if you want to wind them with the warp or if you want to wind them separately. I'm going to do mine separately, just because with plain beaming I find it a bit easier to just make an extra long thread on each side, so as I'm getting to the end, the weight and the thread don't come over that back beam. Some people prefer to just have it all together and kind of snip them at the end and change it around then. All right, so if you want to wind your floating selvage with the warp, just make sure you add an extra thread at each end. So I need 15 of this one at each side, and then I'm going to wind an additional 2, but I'll probably do that at the loom when I go to add my floating selvage. For those of you who haven't done this before, you want to secure your yarn at one end. Now, I do want to point out that wool is very stretchy, so when we wind our warp, this goes for anything, you don't actually want to wind it too tight, because you don't want to influence the length of the warp by stretching it. The main thing is that you just wind it consistently. So all that means is that for every time you go around, you just want to make sure you've got about the same pressure with every single thread, which can be really tricky, and that's why I recommend trying to do it all at once, or at least finishing your chain in one go, because walking away, coming back, even if you've secured your thread really well, it can still kind of get a bit loosey-goosey, and it's amazing how much that can flow on through the other threads as you're working. So I've secured that on. Normally what I do is I drop my cone of yarn down just to make it a bit easier to wind it off. I also normally have this facing directly to me, so I'm going to go over and under, and I'm just following my thread around. And so when I get to this side, I've gone over that peg, and I've gone under these 2, and then I'm going to go over, and when I come back, I'm going to do the opposite of the white thread going back up. So in this case, I'm going to go under that peg, and I'll get a better close-up hopefully in a bit for you, but you can see that there's a cross there now, so that's one of my crosses, and then I'm going to come back up. And so that's 2 threads made already, and we're doing the opposite to the white thread here. So I'm going to go over and under on that side. And then rinse and repeat until we have 15 of our first colour. So that's 2. It does help to have a yarn cone holder. We do sell those at Thread Collective. They can be really useful for a whole bunch of things, so it might be worth looking at. So again, just making sure I've only got really light to almost no tension on this, just guiding it, because I don't want it to snap back when I get it off the loom later, because it will be a false measurement and I will lose more warp than anticipated. I'm going to have a shorter warp than I expect if I'm pulling it tightly. And you can lose centimetres to inches of your warp by just holding your string too tight. So if you're lucky enough to have bought multiples of the same colours, you can wind 2 threads at a time. I've just got one of this one. I'm going to check, I might have 2 of that grey one because I really like that grey. Just going to check where I'm up to. So again, I'll try and show you guys up closer in a bit how I count, but I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And then when I get down to the bottom, that'll be 15. And then I need to switch over to my grey. I did fail to mention that I am setting this warp at 10 ends per inch. So when I'm doing some counting in a bit, just to keep track of where I'm up to, I will be doing 10 threads per inch in that. All right, so I'm just tying a nice secure knot. I often just do an overhand, I find that secure enough. Many people do a weaver's knot, which is even more secure, but that's one of those things, even though I've done it many, many times, I still often have to look it up. Any little bits you chop off, if you're a spinner, you can keep those. These look amazing if you just give them a light card and then add them back through some fluff. All right, so just gonna pause there for a second. So when you're pausing, whether it's the warping board, warping mill, just wrap it around a few times, and that's about as secure as you're gonna get it. All right, so bringing my grey thread up, this is just to show you how the cross is formed, and I'm bringing it over, so the opposite to where my white path marker is, under, and then on the way down, I am following that white thread. Sorry, you can't see the bottom, and then I just do the same thing at the bottom. So on the way down, I'm following the white thread and doing the opposite on the way back up, and I'll show you one more time up here. So we're going over, making a cross there, and then what I am going to do is just pause that thread so I can show you how I count and keep track of how many little threads I've got, because when we are putting our warp onto the loom, your rattle will either have 1 inch or 2 inch spacing, and you will want to very easily be able to separate out your threads just to space your warp conveniently. So I do this at the top and at the bottom. It is a little bit more work, but it saves me if for some reason I lose my cross. No one likes a lost cross. So we want to make sure we don't count our white thread, and then watching my fingers. 1, hold down there, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So all I'm doing is putting pressure on one side and releasing it on the other. So I'm going to have got one of my little leftover threads. If it's your first time, you might need to cut yourself a little loose thread, poking it up through here, and that's my first batch of 10. So that's 1 inch. And then we can check how many we've got here. So pressure on this side, and that's going to release this one, hopefully. It's a bit sticky being wool. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So when I come back up, very awkward angles here to do this, that will be 10. But always double check. It's better to be safe than sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So what you can do now is you can either go through, some people like to take both threads over and then bring it up and through those 2 threads like that, like a chain. But all I do normally is put 1 thread on each side. How you do it is completely up to you. And that way, as you're going, you can count these little chains here. So we know that we have 10, 20 threads. I do need to double check how many grey threads I need, and I will get started winding again. I have sourced another cone of grey wool from my stash, so I will show you guys getting this sorted 2 at a time. Just before, I am going to start warping 2 at a time because I have 2 of these cones. I shouldn't have unsecured that yet. So I carry these as 1 thread. If I was doing more than 2, I might consider using like a warping paddle and keeping the threads a bit more separate. But I find, and I think many other weavers find, when you've wound your warp and you've got it all on and you're threading, having the threads jump 1 to 2 spaces, even up to 1 inch, is not a huge deal in tension as you go. So don't stress too much if you do decide to warp with 2 at a time and you get a little bit confused if you're trying to keep them separate. It won't make any difference. All right, so I'll tie this one on, and I am going to double check how many greys I need. And I was thinking what I might do is just do 2 chains exactly the same, provided it's not looking too bulky. I really don't want to see my pegs getting too full, because the more you have on here and the more this kind of gets spaced out, you'll find that there is a bit of a difference in tension and warp length as you go. So yeah, just be mindful of that. If you're really nervous about it, smaller chains are better, and all that means is just doing, you might do 5 inches. So if you're doing the scarf and you're doing like a 10-inch scarf, you might do 2 lots of 5 inches, and that even makes it easy for getting it onto a lot of looms, because sometimes it's really difficult to work around that like center apron cord, or whatever the cord is. Just referring to my calculations here, we will have this so you guys can print it out, or you can download the WIF file and load it into your own preferred app if you like, because I want you guys to get comfortable with navigating the apps or with the paper and pencil and being able to modify it if you need to. Like say you don't have quite enough yarn, like you might have decided to buy skeins instead of cones, so doing the maths on that, and you might just find it easier to cheat a little bit. I need 223 grey threads. Now I've already got, there's a little odd number in this bout of 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in there. All right. This one to there. Okay, like I said, holding them both together, and away we go. If you're using a warping mill, just make sure that you keep popping your threads kind of together so that you're getting the most accurate length possible. So this will go really quickly now that I've got 2 happening. So we're winding 125-ish in this chain. So, and it'll come together pretty quickly, so I'm going to do some counting in a second, and I'm going to add my counting chain to the bottom there as well, because I've not done that yet. So I'm being really careful to I'm not actually pressing my thumb into that, I'm just using my hand on this angle to like tension it. Sorry, I am very lightly, my thumb's got it there, but it's just to keep it kind of in about the right spot every now and then, because it slips a little on my hand. Okay, so you guys know the drill though. I just showed you how to do the counting, but in this case, because I'm holding the 2 threads as 1, I need to count in 2s. So each time I do the pressure thing, I should have 2 strands releasing. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. When possible, I do really like to buy multiple cones of the same colour if I feel like I'll use them, just to speed up this process, because it can be really quite slow. So I'll make sure I'll you up. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Okay, pop you down there. So when I'm doing this, at the end of each little set of 10, the top thread I'm pulling down over the top of them, and I'm popping that bottom thread up, ready for the next bout. It's like secured that. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And again, going down with the top thread, up with the bottom thread, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, down, up, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and I am going to count all of those little parts and just see where I'm at. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 inches so far, so it's 60 threads, and you can see it's getting bulky quite quickly, so I am going to separate this into 3 lots. I'll do another 2, so that gets me up to 100 threads. Then I will do one with just 50-ish, I'll double check, and then another with 100, or you can split them more evenly into thirds, which is probably better for you guys, so maybe I'll do that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we had total was 253 threads, sort of 84-ish threads. So if we do 253 total, so if we do 2 lots with 84 and 1 lot with 85, that will get us what we need. So we might do our 85 first because I had 5 in this spout. I will double check that, of course. So we're up to 60, 62, 64. This should get me 70. And my mind kind of drifts a lot when I'm doing this, so I'm going to do a quick count, make sure I'm not going too far. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 17, 20. So that's 80 threads so far. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And my little counting thread. Down. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have 80 threads. And we can do 82, 84, and I'm going to drop one of these. Just going to secure it with the other strand. Doing like a surgeon's knot so it shouldn't get slippy slidey on me too much. Do weavers if you prefer. All right, back to a single thread for my 85th one. Don't love having the odd number purely because it means I don't have the nice tidy little bit for my stick later when we're hopping on. But what I will do is cut it. I'll make sure I've got a really nicely tensioned but still decent sized loop that I can thread through. And that's about as good as you can ask for sometimes. And I'm just going to make a note. I just use my notes app when I'm weaving. I can always pop it down in paper later, but because I've got this handy for the pattern, and we've done 85 threads, 84 times 2 to go. So one of those is going to be completely grey, and the other one will be exactly the same as this one, but when it goes onto the loom, we'll obviously flip it so the borders have that really nice peacock blue. Next bit, getting it off. Okay, you want to take some of your threads, and you can't be too cautious, I suppose. So if you're not sure, add more knots and security. So I'm just going to tie off my little counting section here, and then don't need this one this big, so I'm going to snip it in half. What I do is I tie top and bottom this side of the cross, top and bottom this side of the cross. I'll do a choke tie here, I'll do another choke tie here, and I will also do my top and bottom for that too. With this one, I am going to go through the loop that I made for the apron rod, just to make it a bit easier for me to spot at the end. It was part of the bottom loop, so we won't include that in the top one. And I just do, I don't know what it's called, it's just a simple overhand knot, I think, for these ones. You don't want these like particularly tight because you want to be able to get your scissors in to chop them off easily. And you want to make sure you don't accidentally tie up the one that you're using for measuring. Ideally, you want to use that same one each time because, you know, your next one you cut might be a centimetre off, or you might not get the same trajectory on here, which will also change things slightly for you. Tie that. Tie that. Now I'm sure everyone's got their favourite way to do a choke tie. You actually don't want to strangle it too much because you can damage your yarn, especially if you are letting your warp sit for a while. Some people like to make a few warps at once. You definitely still want it tight enough that your threads aren't going to slip around easily though. There's just like that happy medium, and unfortunately that's kind of trial and error to see what works for you. So when I do a choke tie, I like to put my string in half like this, and then making sure I don't accidentally grab that, go over and I thread my 2 loose ends through the loop I've made, like that, pull it snug, and then I just wrap it around like so and tie it up in Nice little bow almost, but I do a surgeon's knot. You do want to also be able to cut these after, so just make sure you've got some finer scissors to be able to get in there. I have left like a big loop on mine so I can actually easily untie it. I'm not going to do another point on this. Some people do a couple of ties, but because this is a short walk in the grand scheme of things, the 2 chokes are going to be plenty. And being such a short walk, we shouldn't really run into too many tension issues either, but you never know. And if I do, that will be great because I can teach you guys some more things. Mistakes are how we learn. I think I heard somewhere, to be a good weaver, you have to be willing to unweave, and that's kind of stuck with me. So another choke tie just up the top here. And get that nice and secure. There we go. And then making sure I tie off my cross at the top here too. Because wouldn't that be sad if we lost all that work? And I just noticed I still haven't done my counting cross down the bottom, so I am going to do that again for just in case. If you do decide to only do one counting thing, do it at whichever end you are going to be popping onto your back beam rod, securing it, because it will make spacing the rattle so much easier. I space the rattle on my loom, but if you've got a table loom, you might do it on a table. I'll bring the camera back over and I'll show you guys that counting cross one more time, because why not? Okay, so got my thread in half like so, making sure I don't tie this up, which I have done many times before. It happens more than I care to admit, but it is a pain in the butt if you do it. All right, so counting to 10 because we have 10 threads in 1 inch. If you were doing 20 threads per inch, you would count 20, or you could do ½ inches, or you could do 2 inches at a time. It depends on what rattle you're using. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we're going to go up through here, and I'm going to show you the sort of chained way that a lot of people like doing too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Excellent, because I needed 15 of that colour. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So what you can do in that case is go down through there, making a little opening, just getting those threads up through there, and we've made a little chain. Now I've gone to the 2 threads per thing, so we can go to counting in 2, so you can see both threads are travelling together. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So I would usually go from underneath. I find that easier with my fingers, like the opposite of what I'm doing at the moment. But it will depend on you and your hands as to which way you find easier. So now we have 3 chains. So that's 3 inches. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. If you've got a crochet hook, that can be handy just to help pull it through. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I'm going to do the last couple in the other style I was doing at the top, just to make sure you've seen sort of both ways, and you can decide what works best for you, what you're comfortable with. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chains there, so that means 5 inches or 50 threads. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Although I didn't think that through, I should have popped 1 thread underneath on that side. And I'm going to bring that bottom thread up and this top thread down. And we'll just leave them out of the way. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Top thread down, bottom thread up. And you can see, hopefully, that you can still see the bumps quite clearly, so it's still easy to count. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. The chain way just gives you a little bit more security, which might be helpful if you're not feeling particularly confident. And then we should have 5 threads here. 2, 4, 5. And then we just tie that off. Doesn't need to be tight, just needs to be secure. So got our ties top and bottom. I've made sure my bottom one's going through that loop to make it easier in the next stage. Got our cross secure here, got our counting chain secure, and then we have our choke tie. Another choke tie here, cross secure here, here, here and here, and got my counting chain there. All right, I'll chain this off in just a moment. Okay, I'm hoping this view is good for you guys to see me chaining off. If you know crochet at all, it's essentially what we're doing. It's a good time to kind of do that, just to make it easier to slide it off. I'm going to apply some tension on mine. So not all warping mills have this feature, but this one, it's got like a little block here that I can increase the tension on, and it just makes it so much easier for getting a good chain. I'm trying to tell if I'm going which direction at the moment. That's increasing it. Yeah. All right. I'm going to get this one off. Hopefully you guys can see. And go gently off because we don't want to change the pressure. Sorry about that noise, that's terrible. All right, so we are going to make a chain. Your first step is just easily pop that over there, so now you've got a loop. You can reach through that loop and pull your chain. This is a very short chain. And then one of the tricks is also, you know, like a lot of people like really pretty chains or braids of wool. What you want to do then when you're chaining is instead of continually reaching through the same side hole, you want to alternate. So then we go to the left side. And then we go to the right side. And like I said, very short warp. And there we have it, our first little section for, this will be the bandana. So if you're doing a scarf, it will be a little bit longer and you'll get a bit more practice with that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do the next section now. We're up to the last chain to make the bandana size. So I've got my chain of 85, one chain of 84, and with the maths before, we figured out that we needed 2 chains of 84 and 1 of 85. I know I need 15 peacock coloured threads, so I'm going to do that first, and then the rest will be all grey. So just the easy way to do the maths there. I've still got my measuring string in place. Let's do this last one. Hopefully the fact that you're seeing this done a few times will really help. If you're using a warping board, it's essentially the exact same principle, but your path that you need to take to get the right length will be different. Ours is just we're wrapping around these posts. You'll just have pegs that you need to figure out the best path for the length of warp that you're doing. So generally when I do a scarf warp, I like to do 3 yards or a bit longer, so I can do like 2 or have plenty to make something else. Because this is wool, you can use it to make little coasters and things as well, or like a little table mat kind of thing for a teapot, or you could make a cowl, so that doesn't need as much, or you could do a couple of short scarves. It's up to you. I'll give the measurements for both options. If you choose not to do this goose eye pattern, you could also thread for like a straight threading. So if you've got a 4-shaft loom, that would be 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you've got an 8-shaft loom, you might choose to still do 4 shafts, or you might choose to do 8. And then what you can do to get different patterns on your scarves then is simply change either the treadling or the tie-up, or maybe both, just depending on what your other patterns might be. So what you could even do is, with an 8-shaft loom, you could do your 1, 2, 3, 4 threading. You could have some of your treadles reserved for one pattern and the other treadles reserved for another pattern. So you can even do 2 different patterns in the one project without changing anything. So as long as it's got the same tie-up and the same threading, and you've changed your treadle tie-up, you can, you could do like part of it in herringbone, and you could do part of it in like a straight twill. There's so many options. We'll talk about it more in the group. I just wanted to make sure you guys had like a solid video that wasn't live, that you could come back to. I do go off on a tangent. I apologise for that, but maybe it will help you learn some extra things as well. All right, so let's get this last one done. So I need 84 threads. 15 are going to be this peacock. If you have decided to wind your floating selvage with it, make sure you do 16 of your colour. You normally want your floating selvage to be the same colour as your border thread. But you know, if you want to change it up, it's your project. Do what you like. All right, so following my path. Again, making sure my tension is not really there, because it is just, wool is just so stretchy. And we don't want to accidentally shortchange ourselves. I've really given myself enough just to do a very small sample, and normally I take it off the loom and wash it, but I've used this wool before, so I'm pretty confident I'm going to be happy with the set that I've chosen, and I'll finish it. And you know what, if I'm not happy, I will do this project all over again at a different set, and you guys can watch that all over again. And you know what, you might decide you want a firmer item or a more gauzy item, and that's up to you. If you do a more gauzy item, you'll certainly get more bang for your buck with yarn, but then obviously it's also going to be more gauzy, and you can felt Harrisville right down. So if you want to do that and you just want to do like a 2-skein project, that's totally up to you. I've seen some done at 8 EPI for a twill, and as long as they're felted a little bit, they're really stable and they look great. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Counting threads. Need one more of these to make 15. Oops, we better make our cross. So sometimes I still do it. You might accidentally not make your cross. Ideally, go back and fix it. Unless you're like 100 threads in, it is just better to go back and fix it now. Yeah, if you're like 100 threads in, you might want to just like mark it or something so that when you're getting a loom, or make sure it's your threading end, just still make a note of it, because it's not going to be part of your like threading cross or your rattle cross. You don't want to forget and be unpleasantly surprised. All right, so that's peacock done. Peacock's got these lovely like greeny flecks through it, super pretty. And this grey that I like so much, what's it called? Charcoal. I'm just a big fan of grey because it just goes with everything. If you were to see my spinning stash, there is a lot of different shades of grey, very little brown, and some white. But yeah, mostly just different shades of grey. So I think one of my New Year's resolutions is to weave myself something colourful. I'm thinking a scarf, but I'm still deciding on the size and the colours and the pattern and which loom. There's so many things to think about. Whew, she needs an oil. All right, so we've got 9 there now. I'm just conscious that I need to pop a counting thread through the middle of one of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. When I did the middle one, I also, with my counting threads, I actually made a mistake in my counting right on the first bout. So I took my little counting thread out and I just redid it because it's going to make my life easier. 3, 5, 7, 9, 10. For those that missed it before, I have just got some odd numbers happening at the moment from where I changed out my blue and grey. That's only something to think about if you're warping with 2 threads. Definitely need to find that oil at some point. While we're on the subject of oiling, looms, wheels, tools, please, please, please check the manual. If you don't have the manual, it's normally online, before you go oiling it. I have heard stories about people using olive oil and other food oils on their equipment, and that is not good. It goes rancid. If your tool or loom or wheel needs oiling, make sure you get the appropriate oil for it. Normally that's like a sewing machine grade oil or a machine oil of sorts. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 10. And then I think some manufacturers even list, because they can't, so if you're in Australia, some of the companies can't ship their oils like they normally would with their spinning wheels, and they provide recommendations as to what to use. Fairly confident it was like a 30 grade kind of oil for my one of my spinning wheels, and yeah, but again, like check the instructions for this sort of thing. You could use the sewing machine oil, or WD-40 is probably fine if you don't have a manual and you've picked up a warping mill or something secondhand. But my oil is somewhere in the shed. This is the last chain. So we have 1 with 85 threads, 1 completely grey, 1 with 84 threads, and we have 1 more with 84 threads that also has 15 threads of peacock. And then we are going to do our floating selvages separately. So if you've not done your floating selvages separately and you want to wind it with the warp, make sure you have 16 of your border colour. So get this counting cross done. I just wanted to talk about the yarn I've chosen to use. I really wanted to use this one for a bandana or a scarf because I've had a couple of people ask me to make them proper woolly items because they're quite hard to get in shops. So The friend that I'm weaving this one for in particular, she rides motorbikes and she just can't get anything warm enough that's blocking the wind, that's repelling the moisture when she's riding. She asked me if I could weave her something, and she came over and she had a look at all the yarns that I have here. I don't work out of the Thread Collective studio. I've got my own space. I live a couple of hours away, and she was really drawn to the Harrisville designs, in particular the Shetland, and she got to feel it in its finished state as well after it's been woven and washed, because on these cones they still have like their spinning oils, they haven't bloomed, so they don't feel as amazing as they do when they're all washed and sort of fluffed up after. But she really loved how, I don't even know the right word for it. It's toothy, but if you're not particularly sensitive or you can tolerate most wools, it's still really beautiful to wear, and it's just like so warm and light because it's got, I'm pretty sure it might be like woolen spun. So if you do a snap test, a lot of people make the mistake of doing the snap test with one strand of yarn. If you do that, it's just going to break. But when you have a lot of these together, it's really quite strong as a warp. And when it's on your loom, you've just got to find like a really nice balance with tension, because if you put too much tension on a wool warp, it's going to stretch out, and then you might find you get abrasion and all sorts of other issues come up that we will talk about as we're weaving. But yeah, I just wanted to let you know sort of why I picked this yarn for the weave along. I know it is an investment, but these cones are really big, so you should be able to get a couple of scarves, maybe like 3 from 2 cones of wool, depending on how long you like your scarves. I like mine quite generous. And obviously if you do like a single really long warp, you're going to get more out of it again, because you're not going to have your waste from your like lashing on and just that inherent loom waste that comes with weaving. And then, like I was saying, if you are a spinner, you can absolutely go adding your scraps to your like bats or whatever you're creating afterwards. If not, it's not superwash. You can felt with it, you can gift it on to other crafters, you could save it up and you could stuff a cushion with it. Like it's up to you, but don't throw any of your scraps away, because it is so precious, especially with the price point. And to think this is 100% come from sheep raised in Australia and New Zealand, and then it's gone all the way overseas for cleaning and milling to Harrisville's specification, and then it's found its way back to us in Australia. And all right, so enough talking, let's get this done. I'm just going to do my counting cross really quick down the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And you know what? If you live anywhere near Toowoomba, you are welcome to come visit me, and you can have a squish and have a look at the colours in person, because the colours are gorgeous. They have like all these little flecks through them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And hey, if you're watching this and you're a weaver or you've had some other cool tips before, drop them in the comments, because it's how we learn and grow as weavers. I do know that this particular yarn can be cost prohibitive for some, so you're welcome to give it a go with substitutions, but just keep in mind that I've made this pattern for this yarn and how it blooms, so you may have to add a little bit more on and sample. I think the closest thing would actually be a hand spun if you're a spinner, and if you are a spinner, it is a 2-ply. Want a sheep breed with a little bit of tooth to it, so you might get away with like a Corriedale or something, but I'd like blend it up and stick like some merino, some other breeds in there. Why not? There's some fluff on Thread Collective too if you need some. I haven't done a lot of spinning for my own weaving, but I do spin to do most of my knitting. But that's more because I learnt to spin first. I started spinning when I was 7 years old. My mum had this spinning wheel, and she only spun like one way, and it was always the same weight yarn, and she always did natural dyeing. And she made me some really lovely, I had like a really beautiful crochet blanket she did, and this sweater that she made it oversized, and I wore it till it like fell apart, and it was like proper sheepy wool. It was like full of lanolin, and I just loved that thing. 2, 4, 6, 9, 10. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 10. Remember with your counting cross, I'm just doing 10 because that's the pattern, so I've got 10 ends per inch. I said if you choose to vary yours slightly, so say you do want like a firmer fabric or like a blanket, you could do 12 ends per inch. Just be mindful it will use more yarn, and you might want to add another repeat of the pattern into the centre section, or you might want a bigger border, or you could reduce it down to 8 ends per inch and you could take out a section or 2. That is all up to you, and I am happy to help guide you through it. 3, 5, 7, 9, 10. And you know what, I'm by no means like the expert on all of it, so you see me doing something, you're like, we don't want to teach beginners that, pull me up on it. So I started weaving end of 2017, and mostly from books and from, the help of strangers on the internet. Sometimes that means maybe I've learnt a bad habit, or maybe I've learnt something that I'm sharing it here that helps you. I'm just tying off my cross. Making sure I get every single thread. I almost missed one. Take away anything from this session. Make sure your tension as you're winding is not too tight. Be as consistent as you can. Try to do it all in one session if you can. And preserve your crosses, because if you lose your crosses, it's a bit of a disaster really. That's like the most important thing to keep in check. And that's another good reason sometimes to do smaller chains. So if you do accidentally lose a cross on an 80 thread chain, it's not as heartbreaking as say 150, 200 more, depending on your yarn. Some of my scarves, I like to use a really fine thread. I think it's pronounced Vene, and it's like a merino. It's like 28.2, and I set that at something like 30 ends per inch. So some of my chains get to be quite substantial in terms of the number of threads, even though they're not really big, and the amount of inches they'll give me on the loom. All right, choke tie, that's not big enough. There's 2 chokes. Go. And you know what, even if you miss a thread, there are ways to fix that when we get to the loom. If you run into that problem, we will help you. We will get you through it. It is fixable. I do love a good contrast when I am making my ties, so I don't accidentally cut my warp. So if I was working with like a plain natural or white warp, as I often do for like tea towels and things, I would really want to make sure that my path thread and my cross threads are a different colour, and make sure whatever yarn you choose is not going to be potentially predisposed to colour running. So you want to avoid overly saturated colours. So you don't want reds and that sort of thing, especially on your choke point, because you might accidentally dye your warp in that section. And you don't always notice until like after you've woven or it's on the loom. Yeah, especially if you're not planning on using it right away. And then we always double check. 1, 2, 3, 4 ties for my cross. I've got a choke tie. I have not bothered with any additional ties because it is a short warp. Second choke tie. 1, 2, 3, 4 ties at this end. I'm going to tighten this up, and we are going to chain it off. There we go. So, like I said earlier, I have the pleasure of having this mill which lets me adjust the tension on it for the rotation. So if you can increase your tension for winding off, do that, because if it's like spinning freely, it goes too fast and it gets a bit messy and you get a bit panicky. You just want to make it as easy on yourself as possible. Just chaining, just like a little crochet chain.